What's up, everyone? Welcome to Form Check Friday.
That's all we get. I was trying to pressure her into doing the intro. She did a great job, right? Everybody comment down below how good a job Danny did and how happy we are to have her on the Form Check Friday again, because she's just great, and it's nice to have something other than my big ugly mug on here every week.
They're making me do this.
Yeah. Before we get into the Form Check Friday, we got to give a big shout out to our sponsor for Form Check Friday, Bells of Steel. They're Calgary owned and operated company that sells wonderfully well manufactured strength training equipment with the goal of making it accessible both price-wise and space-wise. One of my favorite pieces of equipment, the lat pull-down low row, has such a small footprint. Like, it's a perfect piece of equipment for people who want to be able to do some good, heavy accessories in a home gym. And like I said, it's affordable pricing for somebody to just pick up a piece here or there. And lastly, they have showrooms here in Calgary. They have one in Toronto, and they have one in Indianapolis. They ship from the Canada and also from the United States, which again, makes shipping affordable. So go check them out. They support us. They did a ton when we opened up HQ. They helped us out and hooked us up a lot. They sponsor all the local powerlifting meets. They get involved. They put their best foot forward in terms of being a community member in and around Calgary strength sports. So shout outs to bellsofsteel.com for Canada and .us for Americans. Also link down in the description below if you want to go through there and support us. One more thing, it's kind of a big deal. It's apparel launch day today. We got these beautiful new hoodies. A little spin. We got the fanny packs, which I'm very excited about, and maybe one of my favorite things that we've done. Now, it's a tiny little thing. It's not a big flashy thing, but these socks kick ass. One says resilience, one says resistance. They're super comfy. They're not super thick, so they're great for training in. And you've maybe seen some of these fanny packs around. They're well built, you know what I mean? Like, they got some inner pockets with the little mesh. They have multiple pockets. They got this nice little faux leather badge on the front. They got the Resilience X Resistance printed all up and down the strap. And they're just dope, man.
It's like a built-in lunch kit that you can wear.
You could put a beer. You could put a beer in there. You could put snacks in there. Ammonia, baby powder. Great thing to have if you're coaching a meet. Anyways, we got meat tees, lifestyle tees, shorts, all that kind of stuff. Should be live right freaking now. So that's also in the description below. And we're gonna finally get into doing some form check in here. What do you say, Danny?
Let's do it.
All right, we're gonna look at Charlie's squat first up. What does Charlie have to say for himself? Charlie's a 59 kilo, 17-year-old powerlifter.
I was like,
man, this guy looks great for 59. Okay, prepping for nationals. This lift was actually a maximal squat. He puts maximal in quotation marks there.
Because it looks so
Said
easy.
It went better than expected. Recently switched to a narrower stance due to excessive knee cave with a wider stance. Went from 140 to 150 in roughly 2 weeks or less, which he figures is due to the stance change. I was wondering if knee cave is helping my efficiency on squat here. Also, I loosened my belt a bit recently, and I'm wondering how that affected my bracing. So let's take a look and see what we can see here. All right. So he's obviously pretty excited about smashing that. Expected it to be
fast.
A full-blown max, and it looked like a single at 7. It does get a little iffy. I mean, I'm hesitant to be too concerned about the knee cave if it's a really consistent thing. I think one change I might make is just toeing out a little bit. It almost looks like we're toed in.
Yeah.
A tiny bit. The other thing is the sort of like very upright extension. You know me, I'm gonna start Form Check Friday off with a squat And I'm going to say that we need to brace more ribs down. It's just going to happen. It's Friday. This is what we do. I think a lot of the times that knee cave and some of the like demands of the hip to produce force when we get that knee cave can be tied in with a bit of a loss and a lapse in our brace. So I think if you can hold that brace better and be a little less extended, specifically in the low back and going into that anterior pelvic tilt where your hips are kind of like pointing out towards the back wall, I think that might help with the knee cave a little bit. At the same time, though, I don't want you to be too worried about the knee cave. Famously, you look at Leah Beauvoir, right? Or Rhea Stinn.
Yeah.
Amazing lifters, and specifically really great squatters who have a very pronounced knee cave just like this. So, you can't look at that necessarily and be like, okay, that's bad. We got to change it. It's got to go. You're going to die. You're going to hurt yourself. You're going to explode. But
yeah, I might look at it more from like programming considerations rather than like changing your technique. Sometimes I think that when we see a lot of knee cave, it can be somebody who is stronger with their hip extensors, right? So the adductor magnus is contributing a lot as we come up out of the hole, which is a hip extensor, and that can create that knee travel in position, which means that if we build up the knee extensor strength, so the quads a little bit more, sometimes we can eliminate a little bit of that without changing our technique and then just be stronger for it.
Yeah. I mean, stronger, bigger quads never going to be a bad thing for somebody who's looking to do some squatting. What do you think about that narrow grip?
I mean, it's hard to say because I feel like
he looks pretty locked in with it.
He looks locked in.
Like he doesn't look like he's losing his back as a result of it.
I feel like I squat like this as well, so I have a hard time saying like narrow grip is bad, because I do tend to have a pretty narrow grip.
Say narrow grip is bad.
I know
this is bad,
but I do think we can get a little bit too like jammed up in some situations.
Some people, yeah.
But I think for what I'm seeing here, and is he in a comp soon? Was that what was said? Or just
said he's prepping for nationals.
Okay.
He didn't say how close he is, but he did say going to a narrower stance. He put 10 kilos on his squat in like 2 weeks. So
yeah, I mean, I think there is going to be a time where like, your shoulders are going to get a little bit bigger. You're probably going to want to bring that grip out as that does occur. But this looks like it's working pretty well for you right now.
Yeah.
Although, it's not a 9 RPE. So I'm curious what we're going to see when it's a bit heavier.
Yeah, because I think the big thing I'm noticing here, and I think this has more to do with like the extension than necessarily his upper back position.
Yeah.
But like as the knees come in, there's a lot of this like shifting around here.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of like the hips shifting back, the bar kind of rolling forward slightly. And I think again, a lot to do with the extension and then kind of losing that and the brace just becoming a little different. The other thing I'm thinking here is, as much as it looks like we're trying to sit back, like we kind of get the hips back a little and then the whole rest of the movement we kind of spend coming forward. And then we get to the bottom, we're super far forward, and then everything shifts back and up. So I wonder if keeping a little bit more heel pressure and trying to maintain that like sort of tilted position a little smoother, as opposed to trying to, again, reach quite so upright, might help a little bit with even just the consistency, right? Like if the positioning is the same, but it looks the same on the way down as it does on the way up, a lot of times we're gonna have a lot more consistent squat.
And I do just think like strengthening the quads again, coming back to that point, could help with how you're coming out of the hole as well, right? Instead of seeing the knees shoot back like that so aggressively, we might be able to just stay in the quads a little bit more as we leave the hole.
Yeah. And I think as a younger lifter, you probably get a lot out of just like general strengthening, you know what I mean?
Totally.
Like do your Bulgarian split squats, build up your quads, build up your glutes, build up your hammies, build everything up, do knee extensions, do front squats, do lunges, like do it all.
Variety is the spice of life.
And especially as a younger lifter, I think, there's enough research out there to show how
early specialization.
Exactly. How early specialization can be a bit of a Like it can hold you back in your long-term athletic development, even if it is, you know, the one sport that you decide you want to stick with. I would say just like make sure that you're doing a varied amount of movements and varied amount of things, you know, play ball sports and go skate and swim and whatever, you know what I mean? So anyways.
Hike, climb, you know.
Yeah, basically try to be Danny. Be Danny while she's prepping for a meet.
I'm not prepping for Worlds.
And just do everything. It's a very yes to the world kind of attitude. I think we all have a lot to learn from Danny on that front. All right, up next we got Luca. Now Luca's doing some deadlifts here.
That looks like a lot of weight.
Yeah, we got a big deadlifter. He's going to attempt to pull 780 on June 8th.
Woo!
In the USPA. So he uses deadlift bar, competes at 110, which is 242. He's currently 252, so about 4.5-ish kilos overweight. Just overweight class. You look great. Don't misconstrue my comments. He's pulled 765 with straps. Worried about shoulders and how he drops into his wedge, and also wondering if the lockout would get called. So I'm gonna have to watch this a couple times probably.
He's not using straps. Good job.
Yeah.
It feels rare on here, like since I've started coming in. I don't know.
Yeah, I think a lot of people train with straps. Again, look at how narrow that is. It? Am I seeing things, or is that grip like super
it seems
narrow?
Yeah.
Super narrow. So you know, again, mentioning, you know, specifically the shoulders, issues at lockout. I think a lot of the times that super narrow grip, and we just finished talking about this last week on our final lifter, but that really narrow grip, you know, as soon as you start pulling your hands in here, we start seeing more and more protraction, more and more elevation of the shoulder blades, you know, in and up the back. And then we start to struggle with getting into a decent position off the floor. So, you know, we end up pulling from here where I think we could get a lot more tension in here being slightly wider. I think your lower body looks pretty darn good. It almost looks like if we saw this lifted from the front, we'd see a shin angle a little bit like that.
Yeah.
Right? Like maybe we're a little wider than where the knees want to go. And whether or not that's the biggest issue, I think is really hard to diagnose sometimes. But, you know, I'm going to give you some weird sumo advice and say maybe slightly narrower stance and slightly wider grip. That's probably going to be like, there are going to be people out there who are like sumo purists who are like it burns. I would never narrow my stance. I would never widen the grip.
Yeah.
You know, we're doing everything ever that we could possibly think of to limit the range of motion. Why would we ever do these things? And it's like, well, because this lifter you can probably move a little bit more efficiently if you do this stuff. So I think if the upper back is in a bit better position, we're gonna get a little less flexion here. We're not gonna get as hung up at lockout. I also think, I actually quite like this early knee lock. I think that's probably the only reason we actually do end up getting through it, is because you have this kind of technique of doing a bit of an early knee lock. I would be cautious, however, with, again, you know, overextending so much at the top, because the concern then is, and you can see it there, the knees then unlock. So we go from where I would say that's like pretty much a perfect lockout, especially if, you know, I'm gonna blaspheme one more time. We have a slightly wider grip. Those shoulders are gonna naturally sit a little more retracted. Like, not that you're actively retracting them, but just based on where they are in relation to your body, they're gonna look more pulled through.
I'm in side ref position. That's
exactly
what they want to be seeing, right?
Exactly. And then you're going to be able to finish the lift here and be done, right? You're not going to have to do all this extra extension to sell it, wherein now we're starting to unlock the knees, especially there, right? And you've shown the judges at this point, you know where the knee lock is, right? They're like, okay, so he's locked his knees, and he locks his hips, and then, oh wait, never mind, he didn't lock his knees. So that would be my concern there. I would not call you for like a hitch on that. I don't think that the bar, you know, moved down fully. I wouldn't call you for the lockout, but I might call you for soft knees there.
Yeah. Especially, we can really only see like the left one, but it definitely looks like it would be called on soft knee.
Yeah. I mean, again, like brutally strong deadlift here. Like this is great, but you know, if you're looking to be judged at a high standard and you're, you know, really pushing sort of like the bleeding edge of performance, you know, those would be my thoughts and my critiques. Also, there's a 6 snake tattoo on your forearm. I dig that. Anything to add?
I think that covers most of like what I was thinking. I do think like I try to really coach athletes not to let that bar get kicked forward in the start of the deadlift.
Okay. Oh yeah. So as he's bringing his knees into it.
So I really find with that like more dynamic wedge, like we do see a lot of the bar being kicked forward, and I really do think that can kind of throw off the lockout as well.
Even if you just watch the plate there.
Yeah.
You can see that.
Even the right side looks like it rolls more forward than the left side, so
yeah,
maybe kind of helicoptering it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, so what would your advice be? Would you have the lifter like just set the bar further out so that they can still do the same thing without actually, you know, physically pushing into the bar?
Yeah.
Or would you have them kind of change the setup a little bit?
It's usually so either set it up slightly further away from the shin so that you're thinking of it like maybe slightly grazing, but it shouldn't be making like direct contact with the shin, or just trying to create more of that like vertical force into the floor, and stopping yourself before your shins come forward that much.
Right.
So you're trying to reduce some of that like forward knee travel.
Right. Okay, cool. All right, Harry, you're up. What's Harry got to say for themselves? All right, currently going up from 83 to 93. Squat is increasing very fast.
Let's go.
Main issues he has though are elbow pain. Doesn't want to increase his grip width as it doesn't feel as tight. Breathing, when I get to rep 5 or 6 is the main issue. Running out of breath and struggling to catch it again with the weight on my back. He says he's nervous about the knee valgus. He does tempo squats as a secondary day and keep form with no knee valgus. However, when I try to resist it, I'm much weaker. I also believe I favor my right leg more than my left, even though I broke that ankle on that side at the end of 2022. All right. Harry.
I think with the knee valgus, I would probably just try narrowing the stance a small bit first. Oftentimes, I think that if we're standing a little bit outside of that hip width, we can end up having a little bit of knee valgus, and it can be easily fixed with just bringing the stance in slightly. It looks like you have tons of mobility, so I don't think you need a wide stance to hit depth per se.
Yeah.
So I would first go there, and then also just remind yourself that like knee valgus isn't inherently bad if it's not causing you any discomfort or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think the knee valgus here is just like your hips are like, oh, we need to like internally rotate and get like a little bit more support.
Yeah.
In order to produce force to extend. So, like Danny said, I would definitely bring the stance in. The other thing I would do is quit trying to fight it, right? Like don't push your knees out, because what you're doing is you're setting your knees up on the way down to be in a position where they're not strong on the way up. So then they're having to come in to find that tension and find that pressure on the way up. If you just let your knees go straight forward, because like you're not ending up in a position like Charlie in that first squat, right, where the knees are really close together. And even with Charlie's squat, I don't necessarily think the valgus is an issue, but what we're seeing here is pretty much just like a knees straight forward squat on the way up. So what I would rather have a lifter do is just buy into that from the get-go. We're going to see a lot less dynamic, a lot less of things shifting around when you're at your least, mechanically leveraged or well leveraged position, and a lot more stability and consistency in that, squat's going to look a lot more similar on the way down as it does on the way up. What do you think about the grip? He was saying and this is something that I experienced myself moving up a weight class, right? Like it's tougher to get into that same position. The elbows and shoulders start giving you some shit. And he says he doesn't want to go any wider because it doesn't feel like he can get any tightness.
Yeah, I think this grip is probably fine. I think it's more about how you orientate your upper back. So trying to pull the elbows down towards each other on that center point, or even just pulling your lats down a little bit can help you generate more tension through the upper back without necessarily having to change your grip. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of the time when we create these tight grip positions, people kind of forget to actually set their upper back. And oftentimes I've found that that can correct a lot of the elbow discomfort that people feel. And then I would probably also look at like programming. So if you're doing a tempo squat, like is it low bar as well? Maybe try doing high bar on that day, or SSB to take some pressure off, especially if you're peaking right now. Probably not a bad thing to just prioritize the comp movement on comp day and let the elbows rest a little bit, especially if it's going to leak into like bench and squat.
Yeah. Ironically, like I'm gonna say play around with this, because this is what ended up working for me. Was I had a similar sort of like moderate grip width, thumb tucked behind the bar, and when I moved up a weight class, I was getting a lot of shoulder and elbow pain, and it was killing me. So what I ended up doing is wrapping my thumb back around, bringing my grip in, so that I could just let my wrists take the brunt of it, and get my shoulders and elbows into a position where they were a little bit more comfortable. Now, I do still get like a little bit of elbow discomfort sometimes if I'm doing, a decent number of low bar sets throughout a week. So I do also sub in SSB, probably once a week in place of more low bar volume. But
yeah, I mean, he's not even wearing wrist wraps, right? So you can crank that a bit more narrow, put some wrist wraps on, support it.
Yeah, and that was basically what I found success with, was, just letting myself be that little bit closer. Now, I'm not like in against my shoulders or anything like that, because I honestly don't think I can physically get that close. But, I moved from being, I think it was first finger on the rings with my thumbs behind, to being like ring finger on the rings, thumbs around, and just like, bringing my elbows in and just letting my wrists like really get cocked back with nice long flexible wrist wraps. Yeah, and that seems to feel a lot better. It
almost looks like he's kind of like pulled back.
Yeah, like shoulders really forward.
So trying to pull the lats down a little bit more, getting the elbows in line with the torso angle a bit more could help as well. But if you are restricted by mobility right now, then that might also be problematic. But I would try that probably first.
Yeah. And with like breathing and stuff, like number one, it's just going to come as you get better at reps, right? And that's going to come and go. Like any of these adaptations are all temporary, right? If you do a lot of 10s and 8s and 6s, you're going to get good at 10s and 8s and 6s, and then you're going to go do a single and you'll be like, oh my God, that sucked. It, like, just ruined me. If you get really good at singles, you're going to go do a set of 10 and you're going to die, right? Like the pendulum's going to kind of swing both ways. So, I mean, to some extent, the breathing and having a hard time getting your breath and stuff is just something that takes practice and experience and exposure.
I mean, if you're really struggling, you could do some cardio.
Yeah.
Probably not going to hurt you.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel targeted with that.
Shots fired. This is my show now.
All right, I'm on. The last thing I'm going to mention for this lifter is probably maybe loosening the belt a little bit.
Oh yeah, he mentioned that. He said he brought it out one and he wanted to know. Was that him?
Loosened his belt recently and wondering how that affected his bracing. You could probably loosen it a little more, I think, if you have room to. Because I think especially, if you're having trouble catching your breath and stuff.
It's too tight.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, like it does look like there's a little bit of shiftiness in that low back and hip kind of, in some of these reps where we're kind of losing it a little bit. The tighter that belt is, the harder it's going to be to feel what's going on in there and to control what's going on in there. So yeah, a lot of the times I'll have lifters loosen their belt a decent amount and maintain more active control and awareness of what's going on in their trunk.
Yeah, I cannot brace well with a tight belt at all.
Yeah.
And I think it's just important too with like the bracing, remind yourself that you're bracing like 360 degrees into the belt and not just into the belly, into the front of the belt. That's going to be really important for maintaining the rigidity in your spine in the whole of the squat.
Yeah.
And I think with newer lifters, we're like, belly out, and we're really bearing down in the front. But
and it also turns into like a lot of extension because you're just trying to push forwards. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Hopefully that helps you, Harry. You're a wizard. Couldn't help myself. All right, Bjorn is deadlifting. Hi, could you please take a look at my sumo deadlift? I've been training sumo for 5 weeks during a short off-season hypertrophy block. Feels like he's lifting in his strongest position, but it's more like a conventional deadlift technique than a sumo one. Added a video from his last conventional deadlift for comparison. Should I focus on setting my hips lower, even if this feels like a weaker position? Depends on the purpose of depends on what you want out of this, right? Do you want to build the skill of having a good and efficient sumo deadlift? Or do you just want to make your back and legs stronger so you can go conventional more? Because the answer to that question is going to dictate whether or not it's worth, getting good at sumo deadlifting or just using it as a tool to make our conventional better. Because if you look at your conventional, you're a hips higher, strong backed lifter who's a little more stiff legged with a higher hip position. And that's exactly what's coming through in the sumo. Now, chances are when you get your hips low like that, it feels a lot weaker because it's going to be really hard to break it off the floor, maintaining a more upright torso position because we're just not strong in that position. We're not used to that position. And you could argue both ways that, maybe getting good in that position would be really beneficial for your conventional as well. I know for me, when I first did sumo, way back when, probably like 2014, I did a block where all my heaviest pulls were sumo and I only pulled conventional, once a week and did like 80% doubles or something. And I had a huge conventional PR off of that. I think it's easy to, kind of get caught up in being like, oh, well, should it look like this? Should it feel like that? But again, it's really going to come down to the purpose and what you're trying to get out of it. What do you think, Danny? Like, so if it is the technique element of it, and it's like, okay, we deem it that it's worth it for this lifter to like refine and learn the sumo as a skill. What are your main cues here?
Looks like he has some good sumo leverages, so I would probably go, honestly, a little bit wider with the stance and then get that more extended position because it does look like he would be pretty capable of achieving that efficiently. I think one thing I noticed here is like we're not really patient in the start position, so we do let the hips shoot up just a little bit, and that works really well for you in your conventional deadlift, it looks like too. So I can see why you're doing that. But if we do want to get back to like the sumo kind of aspect, I would probably practice a little bit more patience in that start position. Yeah.
I think a lot of it's going to come from getting those knees more forwards and keeping them there. Because that's the big thing that people struggle with. Like if you pulled from exactly this position and there was no no change from this initial position to where the bar comes off the floor, then it'd be like, all right, sweet, you got a great sumo pull. But what happens is we end up pulling from there, right? So we get a lot of knee extension before we're able to like hold this hip angle steady.
This is almost more like a sumo RDL.
Yeah, like a sumo stiff leg or RDL. So yeah, I would say, try to keep that tension like sitting you down, try to keep those knees pressed forwards and try not to give in to the pressure of like, oh, if I just change my position a little bit, there's the bar, right? Like, yeah, it's coming up.
Well, and I think with like conventional pullers, like you're not as used to it being so difficult off the floor, so you naturally gravitate towards what's strongest, which is letting the hips rise a little bit. Yeah. But if you just give it that like second off of the floor to really pull yourself in a position, to let the bar come up off the floor.
And keep pushing.
You'll find that more ideal, efficient sumo position.
Yeah, yeah.
If the goal is to get better at sumo.
Yeah, and I mean, again, that kind of the question at the end there is, should I focus on setting my hips lower even if it feels like a weaker position? It's like, well, maybe. It might be worthwhile to pull from that position because it feels like a weaker position. But it might also be better to just kind of keep pulling more stiff-legged because you'll be able to use more weight. It's like, how does this slot into your training right now? And, maybe you break it up and you have one day where you go like heavy sumo and one day where you're more technical with your sumo. I mean, I don't know. You could really play it either way, but those are kind of the cues that we give you if you're trying to cultivate the technique of it. And if you're just like, honestly, I don't care if I ever get good at sumo. I just want to build my back and legs in a slightly different way so that I can go back to conventional because that's, conventional is life,
Nah, we're switching everybody to sumo here.
then that's fine also.
Conventional's banned from the channel.
Yeah. Ooh, can't watch it. Get that out of here. Cool. Anything else?
No, I think that's
Pretty
it.
set? Okay. All right. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. Big shout out to Bells of Steel for being a sponsor of our Form Check Fridays. And again, it's merch launch day. So if you want to pick up one of these or some of this stuff, it's all at calgarybarbell.com. So we'll see you there.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.